Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha Vasudeva sutang devam Kamsa chanuramardanam Devaki paramanandam Krishnang Vande Jagatgurum. So in the last class, just we had an introduction of the Shrimad Bhagavad Gita, just to have an overall idea of the philosophy of Shrimad Bhagavad Gita, where we indicated, just in a nutshell, what's been indicated, that Bhagavad Gita's philosophy doesn't adhere to either the Advaita or any other, the Vishishta Advaita or Dvaita schools of philosophy. It has its own approach to view the reality. Now the question may come that if the reality is one, how the question comes of viewing the reality in different ways. So very interesting that in Sanskrit, the word which we generally loosely translate for philosophy is darshana. Darshana is not philosophy. We loosely translate it as philosophy. The word darshana, even in our Indian regional languages, darshana means to see. The word darshana actually means perspective. The angle of my vision. It is seeing, but seeing with a particular perspective. To give a common example, the building, the house where you are staying, if you take the picture from outside, from the east, if you take the picture of your own house from the west, if you take the picture from the north, from the south, what you will find? All the pictures are different. Though it is a picture of the same house, it appears to be different because I have taken the picture from various perspectives. Darshana, I'm seeing my own house from the various perspectives, from the various directions, and it looks different. The various aspects of the building gets highlighted as per the direction from which I am seeing. So that way you will find that word darshan is very, very significant. That I agree to the fact that there can be various ways of seeing the same truth as per my temperament, as per my liking, as per my way of life, as per the circumstances in which I am born. I may have a particular trend to look at the reality from a particular perspective, and it's all right. That doesn't mean the one who is seeing from a different perspective is wrong and I am right. It is my limitation that I, because of my likings, my biases, my temperament, my belief system, have restricted myself in a particular perspective. But the ultimate reality is infinite. It has infinite dimensions. It has infinite fibers or layers of understanding. And from the various perspectives, the same truth may, of course, appear quite different. And that way we find that in spite of so many varied opinions, there was no question of clash. So Bhagavad Gita also we will find Krishna. What he did, that when in his time he found there are so many opinions, he made a garland. Just as in the Gita, he will say, he is a wonderful thread through the entire existence, not only through the entire existence, through all the philosophies. He has made a wonderful garland where all these philosophies are like the pearls. And from that, he himself has created a wonderful perspective where you can include all the perspectives. You can include all the perspectives, and feel to certain extent satisfied that even within me, when I'm believing in a particular perspective, there need not be clash in any way with the other perspectives. So what he did in the Advaita Vedanta, we find the idea that there is the non-dual conscious principle, which is being projected as the universe. And there itself we find it is differentiating from itself from Sankhya. In Sankhya, there are two ultimate realities: the Prakriti, the nature, and the conscious principle. They come together to create this phenomenal existence. But in Advaita, even the Prakriti has been sublimated as the conscious principle alone. The conscious principle alone, because of ignorance, is appearing as Prakriti. And the goal of what is spiritual goal? To somehow, through our spiritual practices, get established in our real nature, the conscious principle, the Purusha, which is beyond the Prakriti. Now, as per the ultimate goal is concerned, we will find the Sankhya as well as the Advaita both speaks of inactivity. And if I speak of the Vishishta Advaita, where I don't think of myself to be ultimately merging with the Absolute, I am a conscious principle, just like a Sphulinga. In the fire, we find there's so many, the small Sphulingas, the fire is having the small, so many, the flares are coming out. So each of the small flares is also essentially same as the fire, but they are not totally one with it. That is the amsa amsi samparka that they speak of. But whatever it may be, ultimately I am that conscious principle, which is not merging with the Absolute, but which is in constant devotion with the Absolute. So there also, in the ultimate realization, activity is negated. That here through knowledge, I am one with the Absolute. Here through devotion, I am eternally in contemplation of the Absolute, which has nothing to do with the phenomenal existence. So here we find that we as a civilization were becoming too much otherworldly. The same civilization which was named as Bharat, the word Bharat means Bharata, the civilization which is a knowledge society. Bha means knowledge, Rata means engaged. The one who is engaged in the pursuit of knowledge, by taking all the phases of life to be equally important. Abhyudaya, Nishreyasha, both were equally important. And we will gradually have to evolve through the various stages of life to ultimately reach that state. So that's why we find in the early Vedic society, is what's mentioned, there are 4 Purusharthas: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. That not only liberation, as a brahmachari, as when I am yet to enter in the householder's life, I am a student. What? I have to inculcate the values. Why? That as a householder, I have the full license to pursue for wealth, artha, to pursue for the sensate pleasures of life. I have right, karma. They are also goal. But I have to do it in a legitimate fashion. In such a way, I do not disrupt the harmony, the balance which is existing in the society. That my desires, my pursuit for wealth shouldn't be at the cost of the welfare of the society. So that's why as a student, it was not just the gathering of information. Dharma meant what? To know the do's and don'ts, and using the faculty of will, regulate your life, internalize those values, that you become an instrument. How? That you just become an instrument of the welfare of the society. Even by mistake, you don't do anything because the goodness has become your habit. So this internalizing of the values is the dharma, to know the do's and don'ts and regulate your life. so that the ideas become the nervous association. They become the stimuli response. Conditioning is changed in such a way that your behavior pattern becomes something which is conducive to the welfare of the society. So that's the dharma. As a student, my pursuit for the dharma was what is wrong, what is right, to know that and to act accordingly. Based on that, my pursuit for sensate pleasures, for wealth, was all considered as purushartha. But we will find, as a human being, we are unique. A certain phase of our life we will come that what all we wanted, the sensate pleasures of life, the power, the position, the wealth, all I have. And then, as if I have reached a plateau, that is life after all this only? After that, what has nature given me at some point of time is going to take away from me. I'm going to grow old. In spite of all my desire to clench to all the things I have gathered, nature won't allow me. It will drag me. Everything has to go off. And then, in that wretched condition, that all my aspirations, at last, is it for this? At last, I am a pauper. The nature made me wealthy, and at last it takes away everything, and it's just like a pauper, I have to die. And there that question comes. Then what's the real purpose of life? Dharma, Artha, Kama had its own place. That's why Swamiji used to say that I am a socialist, because half a loaf is better than no loaf at all. This Dharma, Artha, Kama at last can feed you just half. You are half fed. As a human being, unless you can take a quantum jump to relate your existence with that higher dimension of existence, where nothing ceases. You are the Sat Swarupa. That in Sanskrit, the word Sat means that whose existence is never, who never comes to an interruption. Trikal Avadita is Satya. That which was in the past, that which is, that will be. I, as a physical being, as a psychophysical being, was born at a certain point of time. In the second chapter, the word of our real nature, which Krishna will be saying to Arjuna, is avyakta. We are vyakta, we are manifested, but as manifested, we are not sat. I was born at a certain point of time. Before that, I was avyakta, unmanifested, but I was, as the conscious principle. And I take this to be the sat. That cannot be the sat. I was born at a certain point of time. I go through the 6 form of changes: jayate, asti, vardhate, viparinamate, apakshyate, nasti. We were born, jayate. We exist for some time, asti, vardhate. Then as a child, we were growing. At each and every moment, the growth was there, vardhate. And then the middle age came. The growth stopped. Now the body started gradually transforming, viparinamate. And then came, we have already reached the peak, apakshyate. Now comes the degradation. At last, nasti. Your annihilation of the psychophysical existence. So as the 6 changes are concerned, I am not sat. My existence started at a certain point of time, is going to end at a certain point of time, and that in that time, constantly I was changing. The ultimate reality is something which is beyond this change. It is always there. And that Sat Swarupa, which is a Trikal Avadhita Satya, which was, which is, which will be. So the Krishna, we will find that in Bhagavad Gita, will be just taking Arjuna to that dimension of existence. Unless I can relate to that dimension of existence, the questions of life can never be solved. You find all the questions remain unsolved. That for what my pursuit was there, for dharma, artha, kama, for what? Unless and until it takes you to that another dimension. As we give that example again and again in the various classes, that why we find that the answers to the questions of life is never resolved. The more we grow old, the more the optimistic becomes pessimistic. Why we were optimistic? Because we were short-sighted. We were not, at that time, we were so much engaged with the immediate things which the life has given us. We were not at all bothered what is waiting there. We were so short-sighted, myopic. And when we, through our life, have traversed and reached that state, when we find now nature has started taking away everything, I am at loss. I don't know what to do. That what, after all, this life was. And I find as an old man, I am a dejected, totally depressed person, just waiting as if for death. Life has no meaning to me. Why it has happened? Because I didn't find the answers to the so-called, the questions of life. Why? That the example which we give again and again, that if I ask you to draw exactly 4 triangles by joining 4 points, you can try, you can go on trying. It's impossible. You can never do it. If you try to do it in a piece of paper, to have just draw the 4 points in whatever way you can place the points, and now try to join them to get exactly 4 triangles, you will find it's never possible. Somewhere or other, 2 lines will intersect to create the 5th point, and you find that just by joining 4 points to get 4 triangles is impossible. What's the answer? You draw 3 points, spot 3 points in the paper, imagine the 4th point in the space. Now join the 3 points in the paper, you get 1 triangle. And from each of those points, imagine a line joining the 4th point in the space. You will get a triangular pyramid with 3 faces in the space and 1 face as the base. So why I didn't get the answer? Because I was trying to find the answer just in 2 dimensions of the paper. I never thought that I have to relate to another dimension to find the answer. And we all, after pursuit for our dharma, artha, kama, at last we find that we are dejected. The life as if has no answer, because somehow we are hoodwinked. Our eyes are closed. We don't relate to that another dimension of existence. Once you can do that, you will find that all the problems are solved. All the questions are being answered. And that's what Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, at the very beginning, he will be doing. He finds Arjuna who is established in dharma. We will find that when he's going to the battle, he's quite proud of his capabilities. As a student, he was well educated in the martial art. He was the best student among all the cousins and among his own brothers and cousins. He was the most capable warrior of his time, and he knew what he's going to do is right. He's going to fight against the evil so that the right may prevail. And then we find him in a situation where he is totally lost by seeing his near and dear ones. And from there, we will find Krishna is taking up. When he's taking him up, in that situation, when Arjuna realizes that he is in a very emotional, bankrupt situation, and he needs help. His own friend now becomes his guide, his friend, philosopher, and guide, and he seeks his guidance. Then only Krishna, the Gita starts. That will be in the 2nd chapter. And before that, we will find that what we were saying, that Bhagavad Gita, after all, is not the philosophy which adheres to any of the Vadas, the Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, or Advaita. Why? Because we'll find that Krishna never consented to that Arjuna's idea. What? That I don't want to kill, let me retreat. Let them have the kingdom. Even if they want to kill me, let them kill me. I don't want this to be a part of this violence, battle, bloodshed, killing, annihilation. It apparently appears to be so nice. If I would have been, and this Gita would have been adhering to Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, or any of those philosophy, the God was supposed to applaud him, appreciate him by saying, yes, that is the thing which is needed. But we find just the opposite. Here we find he's saying that just get up from this faint-heartedness and fight, but fight with a different perspective. And for that, to make Arjun aware of the different perspective, the entire Gita was spelled out. It's gospel, spelled out by God to change his perspective. And then at last we will find Arjuna is saying that all my doubts have vanished. Now I see the truth clearly. And with equipoise, I can take part in the war. Not with a sense, with a proud feeling that somewhere my enemies are there, they are unrightful, I am the rightful, I am the one who is doing the right thing, right should prevail, and I am going to the war. No. Now his perspective will change. That in this world, in the second chapter, there are so many important ideas will come. That when we take as us that life as an individual, again, we cannot give answers to so many things. We nowadays prescribe to vegetarianism, veganism. It's good. I'm not going against it. But think the ecological balance. Big problem in Australia that so many animals were brought. That Australia is such a continent which got segregated from all other continents ages ago, millions of years ago. And that's why the evolution took place in its own way. There are so many animals which has no, as such, similarities with the other animals in the other continent. So when the humans migrated from the other continents and they started staying here, we started bringing all the animals, the other things from the other continents here. And how the ecological balance was disturbed? You brought some animals for which the predators were not there. And then you find that the land which is supposed to be full of vegetation has been totally overgrazed. Soil erosion. And then the total ecological is disbalanced. There is tremendous flood. The soil erosion is there because it has been overgrazed. The animals are having no predator. So now if you take the life as a whole, one, you will find even there is a role of the predator there. He keeps the balance. You cannot think, I can think I have the choice to be a vegetarian or a vegan. Can the lion has a choice to be a vegetarian or a vegan, or the tiger? It's impossible. The Lord has made them in such a way that they will feed, they have to feed. And why? From the Lord's perspective, life is one. To sustain it, there has to be a wonderful ecological balance. Similarly, here also as a human being, with all our developments and everything, if we find certain faction, certain factor, certain particular faction of the human society have started believing that by hook or by crook, it is I who should prevail. I should enjoy the kingdom. I should have all the wealth. Again, the Yajna Adhipati, the one who is the Lord of Yajna, that is not his plan. He has built the world as per the rhythm, as per the plan of interdependence. There should be a mutual interdependence which will maintain a wonderful balance to sustain the entire creation. And whenever we find such disruptive forces are coming out, it is the plan of the divine that at last we will find them to be annihilated. How powerful Hitler may be, how many millions of death he may be the cause of, but at last he has to be annihilated. The Lord of the plan was, the Lord of the universe is such that at last he himself had killed himself. He committed suicide. He had to do it. You cannot prevail with the idea that for my good, I will kill everyone and I will, the one like a cancer cell, I have to sustain myself. A cancer cell is never the plan of the ultimate divine, the Yajna Adhipati. Why? Because at last, as a cancer cell can never exist with all the way it plunders the entire system. At last, that entire system, the human body, when it dies, along with the cancer cells also dies. It cannot exist. So if I now take that way, that it is, after all, when we find that certain factions of the society has become a disruptive factor, it is only thinking of its own welfare, of its own power, of its own might. The nature will arrange itself in time. In no way we will find a time will come which has to be annihilated, removed. And the one who is removing, if he thinks I am removing, then the clash of course comes. But if he thinks that it is, after all, the plan of the universe, the Lord has planned it, I am just the instrument there. He's doing the same thing. Now he can do with an equipoise, with a balance. He's with an equipoise. Now he can do that. I am, after all, the instrument in the hand of the divine. The divine has somehow, he could have chosen anyone, but somehow he has chosen me. And I am doing the work which is actually the plan of the divine. So I'm just a divine worker. So here you find there's no question of retreat. But at the same time, the question of dispassion is there. First, I have to cleanse myself from all the senses, that all the ideas of do's and don'ts, which I have learned in my life. I have to unlearn them. And by relating to that higher dimension of existence, with equipoise, I have to act. So here, inaction is no way prescribed. And that's the beauty of Bhagavad Gita, that abhyudaya, the social upliftment, and nishrayasa, your own emancipation, need not be segregated, compartmentalized, and amputed. That if I have to dwell with the social upliftment, it cannot be that I can practice my spirituality, which I think can be practiced only in seclusion. This two goes hand in hand, together. And this is the Bhagavad Gita in one word. If we can just say that what's the philosophy? It's a philosophy of contemplation in action. That Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that chok bujlei tini achen, chok khulle tini nai. Very interesting. That is God only there when you close your eyes? The moment you open your eyes, is he not there? He is there when you close your eyes. He is there when you're opening your eyes. When you're closing your eyes and trying to relate to that dimension of your existence, which is conscious principle, that is he. When you open your eyes and see the universe, it is his Vibhava. It is the Lord again who has defined expression as this universe. And that also is learning, is this existing as per rhythm. As far as I am living this life as per the rhythm, constantly aware of my real existence as the conscious principle, in a detached manner, as an instrument, I can continue with the life without losing my equipoise. I can be still the instrument of the Lord. As Sri Ramakrishna, we will find some of the examples very interestingly help us to understand this idea. You know, when the children play, the nanny is sitting, the grandmother is sitting, and the children are playing. What's the play? The game, the concept of game? That one is made the thief. All others are running. To whomever, if the thief can touch someone else, he also becomes the thief then. But there is a condition. So all has to run away from the thief. Otherwise, he will be the next thief and he has to chase the others. So, but what is one condition? If anyone somehow touches the granny, then even if the thief touches that person, he is no more, that child is no more, can become the thief. So somehow you have to touch the granny. Now, when the game is going on, all the children have a tendency to touch the granny so that they won't become thief. But the granny will be chasing them out. No, go and give the, because why? Because she wants the game to go on. If all comes and touches her, the game will stop. So she doesn't want that all should come and touch her. Let the game go on. So what a wonderful example. So here, that's the idea of the Bhagavad Gita. When Arjuna wants to touch the granny, he says, no, go and fight. So he wants the game to go on. It should continue. But that doesn't mean that I have to be suffering with all the things which are happening on this life. If I become the Leela Sangi and a companion of the Lord in his Leela, in his divine play, the same goal, the same game, no more becomes a battlefield. It just becomes the Leela, the plan of the divine plan, the unfoldment of the divine plan, in which I am just the instrument. So this is the background with which the Gitas we have to understand. So in the first chapter, we will find that when at last this Mahabharata war, which there was no way in which the peace could be brought. The Pandavas and the Kauravas were now in the battlefield. So that's the background of the first chapter. The Krishna has tried his best. When Yudhishthira told that we will be happy just with 5 villages, the Duryodhana's reply was, king never beg. If you want 5 villages, what 5 villages? If you need even the point of a needle of earth, Shuchagra Medhini, you have to take it by fight, by battle. So that was the standpoint of Duryodhana. So he has, first of all, forcefully taken away the kingdom, and now he's saying that you have to fight. Even he was not ready to compromise with 5 villages. Shuchagra Medini, just the point of a needle, that much of earth, he was not ready to give without fight. So fight was inevitable. It was decided. Now they are in the battlefield. Krishna is the charioteer of Arjuna, Sharathi. So both the sides are there. We find in the first chapter that Lord Krishna has arrived on the scene along with Arjuna with a magnificent chariot. And Arjuna is sitting there. Krishna is the charioteer. Arjuna is the one who is going to fight. So the 2 armies are arrayed, ready for the battle. And Arjuna now requests. For here, the Bhagavad Gita starts. What is the request? Please place the chariot between the 2 armies, so that I can survey both the opponents. I can see who all are there with whom I have to fight. It's a very interesting situation. We can easily relate it even with our day-to-day life in the present situation. I will come to that. Now, what happens when Arjuna has asked his friend, the charioteer, to take him between the 2 armies? So it was not that profound idea that I am the instrument of the divine, that just taking part. He never had that idea. In the words of Rishi Aurobindo, very nice, it was actually not with any profound idea, but with the proud intention of viewing those villains of unrighteousness, whom he has to meet and conquer and slay. Very nicely, poetic way Aurobindo is using. In this holiday of fight. For him, he was so confident about his strength, about his capabilities. It was just a holiday of fight. Who are those unrighteous ones standing against me? They're just trivial things. Just taking away a little of my time. Okay, I have to just kept apart a part of my busy schedule just for this holiday of fight. Let me finish. With this intention, he's as if entering into the battlefield. What a poetic way Rishi Aurobindo is writing. With the proud intention of viewing those villains of unrighteousness, whom he has to meet and conquer and slay in this holiday of fight, so that the right may prevail. Now, when the moment he looks, we find he's getting now drained out. However, as he gazes at them, there's a contending army, he realizes it is not just a civil war. It is going to be a domestic war within the family, as if between the husband and the wife, who were separated because of the family issues where the wife was probably felt that she has been wronged again and again and again. And she, as per the rules, were separated for 1 year, and now they come to the court. Both are convinced it's just a legal matter and it's off. And then they find the emotions. The moment they see each other, they find the emotions welling. You can relate. It happens. They were separated. They were fully convinced that in no way we are going to be together. After 1 year, they're coming to the court just for that. And then they find emotions welling. The moment you are in presence of them. That's happened with Arjuna. The cousins, with Duryodhana and all, with all their evil intentions, it is with them, along with them, he was growing up. They were all together. They were constantly having fights, quarrels. But it is after all those blood relations with whom he was growing up. Not only that the grand figure, the grandsire, Bhishma, his teacher, Dronacharya, they are there in the contending family. So it's not just a civil war. It's actually a domestic war. It is not that only the man of the same race or the same clan or the same nation, but it is those of the same family, of the same household who are standing opposite to each other. So now it is quite obvious that what's happening, that it's almost he finds that he's getting drained out. There's a tremendous emotional bankruptcy in Arjuna, which is inevitable. Even in our day-to-day life, as the example we were giving, we find that in the situation almost like this emotionally abusive relationship. What is emotionally this abusive relationships? Where most probably there was no physical abuse, but the scar was not in the skin, but it was in the soul, which made them to decide that they should be apart. The fight, the legal fight has issued. It's a common thing in the situation. Even here also you can easily refer to that. It's an emotional abusive situation where my emotions are obsessively dragging me to sustain that relationship. But the rational mind is saying that I have been wronged repeatedly and deliberately. But somehow I find that emotion has now become an obsession, compulsion. There is no reason to be together, but by that somehow the rational mind knows that I've been repeatedly wrong. I have repeatedly, that deliberately I have been wronged again and again. Emotionally, most probably there is no physical scar, but the soul has been wounded. But somehow that obsession is there to continue. And then you find that what can be defined as an emotionally abusive situation. What are the immediate effect of that emotional bankruptcy? So it can have a serious negative effect. Yes, in the courtroom itself, you can find that someone has collapsed. It happens that after 1 year of separation for the hearing, they came and one collapsed. They both had the intention for separation. Then why this collapse? Because it has a tremendous, this emotional bankruptcy has a tremendous effect, negative effect on the physical and mental well-being. But sometimes we find there is a compromise even after that collapse. Why, Because if in spite of all these emotional abuses, we do make some mistakes. What are the basic mistakes? Even nowadays, let us forget Arjuna. When he say that this Arjuna's Vishada sometimes is very difficult to relate, we can easily relate. Let us take that what are the mistakes we do when we are in emotional, this abusive situation. We start ignoring our well-being. Sometimes that thing comes, let me compromise, that all this, that even if I suffer, it's good, but let me continue. So we start ignoring our well-being. I find that each and every day I am getting drained out. My mind is agitated. They've started developing a lot of physical ailments in the form of blood pressure, palpitation, and so many things, nightmares. Still, I just think of continuing. I start ignoring my own well-being. That's the first thing which happens in all the emotionally abusive relationship. And this, the second mistake we all do, we forget that we are not here to unconditionally please others and to be their slaves. Oh, whatever you do. I am just your slave. Yes, some do develop that type of attachment. And we reason that it is my love, but we forget it is not love. It is infatuation. It is obsession. Each and everyone has his right to live their life fully. How can someone take away the right to live from you? So I am not here to unconditionally please someone. These are the same mistakes which happens today, used to happen ages ago, and it happened with Arjuna also. Arjuna also, we will find, the moment he sees that what his grandfather, his teacher, the father-in-law, uncle, cousin, their sons, this nephews, the grandsons, the friends, he's totally now drained. He thinks, he will find that he's, first of all, we find that is affected physically, mentally, and then he's ignoring his own well-being. He forgets that he's not there to unconditionally please someone. The third mistake we do what? We irrationally start taking all the blame personally. Oh, most probably it is my fault. There's a term called gaslighting nowadays, in the modern days, when the one who is abusing you, the so-called the predator, will try to make you believe it is all your fault, and you start believing, it is all my fault. And that adds up to your, there's what you say, the disruptive, negative aspects of your well-being. It adds up. You become more and more weak, fragile. Totally, what you say, that you find yourself totally weak, fragile, emotionally, psychologically, totally down, drained. But you start blaming yourself. You start blaming that most probably, yes, I am the person who is responsible for all this. And not only that, whenever the question of thinking ahead comes, in such relationship, we find what? They anticipate disaster. That in their attempt to take strong, decisive stand, oh, there is going to be some disaster. That I am most probably is just frying, I'm getting fried in a frying pan. If I take the jump, I will be in the oven. This is not going, no way going to help me. Yes, in some situation, yes, if we find that we can continue, of course we should try our best. But in many situations, we find that there is no way. You have to take the jump, and most probably the jump will help you out of that situation to have a new life with which you have the right to live. Not only the physical and mental torture can never even enable you to lead a spiritually fulfilling life. Those are the basic things. I have to be healthy physically, mentally, and then only I can think of spiritual life. Such type of coexistence in no way even going to help me spiritually. But we sometimes just rationalize and think it's all okay. We philosophize our weakness, and we think, anticipate disaster in our attempt to take the strong, decisive stand. And then what? At last, all those things speak of, we tend to compromise. So these are the 5 major mistakes we find in emotionally abusive relationships even today. The one who is abused starts ignoring his well-being, the first thing. They think they are there to unconditionally please the other person, the second thing. They take all the blame in themselves, the third thing. They anticipate disaster is going to happen if I take some decisive stand. And at last, let me compromise. And we find the same traits which are universal is finding expression in Arjuna. And that's what has been described in the first chapter. What are the serious, first thing is the serious negative effect it has on the physical and mental wing. By seeing his teacher, his grandfather, his father-in-laws, his uncles, cousins, nephews, seeing them, he knew. It was not that he never knew that with them he has to fight. He knew. But the moment he saw them, immediately that emotional bankruptcy comes into existence. Because somehow he's emotionally linked to them, though he has been wronged again and again by them. So that emotional obsessive drag starts draining him out. What happens? In the words of Arjuna, in the 29th sloka of the first chapter, what says? Sidanti mamagatrani mukhang cha parishusyati veputhascha sharire me roma harshascha jayate gandivang srangsate hastat tyakchai cha paridayhate nacha shaknamyavasthatum brahmativa chame manaha. Just see how he is getting drained out. What he's saying, oh Krishna, seeing my own kingsmen arrayed for the battle here and intent on killing each other, my limbs are giving away, my mouth is drying up, my whole body is palpitating, shudders. There are shudders in my body. My hair is standing on end. My bow, the Gandhi, which I am holding in my hand, is slipping off from my hand. The one who is the most strong person, all his strength is gone. My skin is burning all over. So my mind is in the whirling confusion. It's confusion. It's total, I'm in total confusion. I'm unable to hold myself steady any longer. He actually sits down, his droops. And then he continues that what he says, that now he will be ignoring his well-being. The first thing he says, na kangshe vijayam. I don't want victory. Na cha rajyang sukhani cha. For that he came to the battlefield. He says, nothing I want. The 31st sloka, na kangshe. I desire neither victory, nor empire, not even any pleasure. And he forget that he is not there to unconditionally please someone. What he's saying, how can I stay without them? Just see. The one who has been wronged throughout the life by the Kauravas, he's saying, how, after all, how can I exist without them? Yashamarthe kangshitangno rajyang bhoga sukhanicha te ime avasthita yuddhe pranang styaktya dhananicha. That the one with whom I am going to fight, if they die, what I am going to do with all the wealth if they are not there? So just see, as if just to be with them, to please them, to be their slave, is his intention. So he has forgotten that when the ones that emotional bankruptcy has happened, he has totally forgotten that it is all the wrongdoings which has made him to come to this battlefield. And now he's ready to unconditionally, he's ready to please someone. He is ready to stay with those person in spite of all the abuses. So that's the thing he's saying. And then he starts taking irrationally all the blame in himself. What he's saying? Papam evam asrayed asmad hatvaitan atataina. He's saying them atataina. They are attackers. That's correct. In spite of the fact they are the attackers, but still I will be committing sin by slaying this. Papam evam asrayed sman hatvaitan atataina. So even if though they are the attackers, but if I slay them, I will be committing sin. As if he's taking the blame himself for just what the thing that has actually, as the happenings has brought him to that situation. And there is no other way to win the war than by killing them. It has to be done. But he says that I will be committing sin. Not only that, now he starts anticipating that all disaster is going to happen. What's kulakshaye pranashyanti kula dharma sanatana dharme nashte kulang kritsnam adharmo abhivatyutah. But with the destruction of the dynasty, it is the dynasty, it is the family tradition which keeps the religion, which keeps the values. It's a thing even we can understand. A small child is growing up along with the family, he's all good. And a time comes when he has to go to the uni. Most probably the uni is not near to his house. It is in some other state. And now he has to live a life alone, most probably with the friends, the uni students. So he's going for the first time away from his family. And then suddenly the family starts hearing His boy has done this, his boy has done that, and the family cannot believe. He's such a nice boy. How can he be behaving that way? Actually, the family is like a fort with all those values. When you are there, you are protected. The moment you are out of that all those value systems are no more working for you. Immediately, you may trend to become totally just a free-going person, just breaking all the so-called the do's and don'ts. We find it's a common thing. So that's the thing he's saying, that if the kulakshaya is there, all the dharma is going to be vanished. But he forgot one thing, that in spite of the kula being intact, dharma has already vanished. Duryodhana has totally taken away the kingdom from them. They're all together as a kula. They were not supposed to do that. The kula is meant to keep the values, but in spite of the kula being together, the value system has totally fallen off. Then what is the question? Where is the question of kulakshaya comes? It has already, all the values has been diluted, dissolved. This war is the only way where he can take the legitimate right to establish religion again. There's no other way. But what he's saying, because of this weakness, he is anticipating disaster. Kulakshay pranashyanti kula dharma sanatana dharme nashte kulam kritsnam adharmo abhivatyuta. So when the dynasty is destroyed, its traditions gets vanquished, and the rest of the family becomes involved in immorality, in irreligion, adharma. But Arjuna forgot that their cousins have already transgressed the family tradition. What type of family tradition it is that in front of all the Kulastri, the wife of the family, can be derobed? Where is the value? The entire value has fallen off. Where is the value where you cheat someone else in the game of dice to take away their kingdom and send them in exile? Where is the value? It is already gone. And Arjuna is saying that the kulakshaya, this question of kulakshaya doesn't come, as the kulakshaya has already happened. That's why they are in the war. But he, because of that nervous breakdown, is anticipating. And he's philosophizing nicely. It apparently appears, so it's all correct. But we have to understand the background and then judge that these words are not mere words standing alone. These words have to be linked to the situation. And then you find these words are mere philosophizing. The weakness, his own weakness, it in no way is rationalizing the thing which he's saying. And at last we find they tend to compromise and even contemplate self-destruction, which is as good as suicide. Yes, even in our present day emotional abusive situation, we find that as an extreme measure, someone has resorted to suicide. And that's what Arjuna is almost saying. What? Yadi mam apratikaram ashastrang shastrapanaya dhartra rashtra rane hantyum tanme kshemataram bhavet. It is better if with weapons in hand the sons of Dhritarashtra kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield. It's just suicide. So these are the mistakes which Arjuna is doing. But another mistake we do, which we have never spoken of previously, is that when we are in an emotionally abusive situation, we become more and more isolated. I don't relate with others. I forget that that's the time when it's a priority to build a support structure. In life, you should have someone in whom you can totally have faith. And at the time of crisis, you can go and relate to. But generally in emotionally abusive situations, we find they become very, very isolated. And that's the major reason for which we find that the other factors also cannot work out. All the mistakes remain as mistakes. They cannot nullify those mistakes and come out of them because there was no support structure. We might not be able to take care of everything by ourselves. We should always be aware of that fact. In the moment of crisis, that in spite of all our knowledge, you will find that you are so much drained out. You are not able to take care of everything by ourselves and we find ourselves overwhelmed. So we need someone really on whom I have faith. I know who is a person of integrity, who can stand with me and can help me. Arjuna only had this thing as a positive thing. Everything went against all other mistakes he has committed. But this is the right thing he did. And that's why we find that because of his choosing this Krishna as his charioteer, before the Mahabharata war began, that interesting story is there. Krishna was not willing to take any side. But to get his favor, both Duryodhana and Arjuna both arrived, both reached the Krishna's residence together, almost together. Duryodhana came first. He was by nature a proud person. He saw a throne kept on the head of the bed in which Krishna was lying. Krishna was lying, he was resting, and near his head a throne was kept. Duryodhana, being a proud person, he entered early. He came and just went and sat there waiting for Krishna to wake up so that he can ask his favors. And Arjuna, just a few moments later, he arrived. He bowed down, offered his pranams, and came and sat near the feet of Krishna. Now, when Krishna got up, naturally the one who is sitting near the feet, when you get up, your vision will be towards that person. You can first see that person. So Krishna sees Arjuna first, and then of course he turns around and sees Duryodhana also present. And naturally he asks, what's the reason for you to be here? And then both of them says that now the war is something which is inevitable, and we want you to be by our side. And then Duryodhana claims that I am the one who came here first. It was just a few moments that before he came. So I have the right to claim first what I need. But now Krishna very tactfully told, yes, you did came first, but I saw Arjuna first. When I got up, I was sleeping. When I got up, I saw Arjuna first. So I would like to give Arjuna the first chance to ask what he wants. But Krishna made one thing very clear, that whatever it may be, I am not going to take part in the war. So now, very interesting. When you ask Arjuna what you want, he gives him the two choices. That see, that after all, both of you came to my favor for my favor. So none should go empty-handed. So here is a choice for you. All my army, my entire army, there's all my warriors is in one side. They are in thousands. And the other side, I am the one who won't be taking part in the war directly, won't even ever pick up the weapons for the war. I'm going to be there unarmed, not taking part in the battle. Now, whom do you want? So here, this was the choice which saved Arjuna. If he would have taken that Akshayani Sena in this mentally deranged situation, with all his power, with all his wealth, nothing would have helped him. The one who is supposed to be the instrument in taking the decision, that has fallen off. Nothing would have helped him. That's happened. That in our life, when we start our life, we think our bank balance, our position in life, all this is going to be the only factor which is going to bring me security. And how helplessly we find nothing works. Arjuna was very, very wise in this manner. He told, I want you. The God he wanted. He wanted Arjuna totally unarmed. He knew that he is the one who is going to be his friend, philosopher, and guide. And that's why this chapter, in all the chapters in Bhagavad Gita is called yoga. Yoga means the way by which I can relate to that higher dimension of existence. Now, how can Vishada become yoga? Yes, Vishada can become yoga. If instead of totally making us isolated with our problems, as if I get encapsulated in a cocoon and don't allow any type of help, and I just die there. The cocoon doesn't come out and dies inside the cocoon. So sometimes in our life, we do that, isolate ourselves. But that all those crises can become yoga. It can help you to relate to that higher dimension of existence. Just the way it even happened with the author of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. When he was in a crisis moment, somehow it was a plan of the divine. He met Ramakrishna and life changed. And that also became for him the Vishada yoga. That instead of getting overwhelmed so much that I isolate myself, I seek for a higher guidance. I seek for someone who can be my friend, philosopher, and guide, who can guide me through this crisis and can help me to outgrow out of it, so that I can broaden my perspective and can build my life again on that broadened perspective. And that's why this first chapter is also yoga. It's called the Vishada yoga. So Arjuna wanted Krishna, as he was not going to take part in the war, as his Sharathi, the charioteer, the one who will be driving his life's chariot. That's what we all want. Come, let God come down and drive my life's chariot. If he's the chariot, what to fear? So that's the story which makes the Vishada into Vishada yoga. So this Partha Sarathi is our Sarathi. The story of the this despondency which makes Arjuna babble. Despite that, we find that as he has chosen himself as a friend, philosopher, and guide, you'll find in the second chapter that idea will come, that Karpanya doshopahata sabhava prichhamitvam dharma sangmura cheta, that he realizes that somehow he cannot take the decision because of the faint-heartedness, because of the anxiety which this emotional bankruptcy has brought in, and he needs the help and he seeks the help. And there the Gita starts in the second chapter, where Krishna starts counseling. One of the very first and most important criteria of counseling is, even in the present day, not to give suggestions or advice unless it is short form. Sometimes seeing someone in very, very dejected situation, we just go with our all advices. There are so many people to advise, but we forget that we are just not following the very first rule. Unless someone comes out and shouts the advice will be of no avail. Just as in English, they say you can take the horse to the water, but it is the horse which has to decide to drink the water. You cannot make it drink, even if you thrust its mouth inside the water. It has to drink. So unless it has decided to drink, the counseling will be of no avail. So in the second chapter, we find that in spite of all the weaknesses, that's the only correct thing which Arjuna did. He had God by his side as his friend, philosopher, and guide to guide him out of this crisis, of this emotional bankruptcy. And there the counseling of the God starts, which is the best counseling piece, which still we find, to which we can avail, as the entire humanity can avail. Which the Gita is a scripture which can transcend any ism easily. It can be a wonderful way of counseling. As we will go through the Gita, we will find that in spite of its spiritual overtones, it has the universal approach. And that can be very, very uplifting. And that way, it makes the Gita a universal scripture. And so that we will continue with our study of the Bhagavad Gita, sloka by sloka now, from the second chapter, which we will take up again in the next class. And we will find that how wonderfully the God himself, who has incarnated himself as Krishna, is taking Arjuna, guiding him just step by step, gradually, to evolve, to broaden his perspective, so that he can build his life on that broadened perspective and can all take part in the war for the social balance which is required, at the same time not compromising with his spiritual upliftment. Both goes hand in hand. And that's what the Gita is meant for. So we will continue with our study of the Bhagavad Gita. We will start the second chapter. Sloka by sloka, we will study from the next class onwards. With this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskar.